One more round to go of the GMT Tournament 2023 edition. Round 6 is over. We saw yet another change of the leadership, and now it's Vincent Kammer taking over the top spot from the Vietnamese Grandmaster Le Quang Liem. Let's have a look at some of the most interesting moments of the round 6 of the classical tournament. We're going to start with a game of Yu Yi against David Navarra. Clearly, after suffering a bad loss in round 5 against Vietnamese Grandmaster Le Quang Liem, Yu Yi was not much in the fighting move, and he decided to enter a rather dry line, something that Navarra in the postgame interview would have said that last time he checked it when he was a child. The line is pretty simple here. The only trick here that black cannot really take on d2, because after queen f6, short castle, bishop c3, rook e1, white develops a pretty strong attack. So queen f6 was played, bishop c5, queen e2, queen e7, the queens disappeared from the board, and here after bishop d3, perhaps because of the overall rankings, David felt that he has to be a little bit more ambitious, as he had a real shot to fight for the first place, and he decided to castle the other way. And now after the long castle, bishop f4 was quite precise, but the Chinese Grandmaster threatened to play bishop e5, attacking the pawn on g7, and now Navarra had to accept the dark square bishops have to be traded. It did happen, but then again, not much action was happening from here on, because after f6, white not really is interested to take on e6 and play bishop f5, because black just plays rook e8, g6, king d6, and is feeling pretty safe. Actually, it's white who needs to be careful in the rising pawn in game. So rook e3 was played, g6, king f2, bishop f7, g4. White was thinking about ideas like rook h3 to bother the pawn on h7. And that's the reason why the Czech Grandmaster included first rook e3, h5, dealing with the problem. And after g5, he closed the position at the king side and simply traded the rooks. White has a slightly better pawn structure because these black's kingside pawns are positioned on the color of his bishop, but there's no way to make a progress, and draw was agreed very quickly because this is simply a fortress that the players cannot crash through. Another game which ended in a draw was Daniel Bogdan-Diak against Arjun Erigaisi. The Romanian Grandmaster played a rather strange opening. After c4, bishop g7, he played queen a4. Anything else was better. I guess c takes on d5, knight c3 would be the more conventional way to continue. And after knight c6, maybe knight e5 was an interesting way to fight for something in the opening. But he played a rather strange and slow move d3. Short castle, bishop d2 seemed simply not right. I guess he was preparing to play c takes on d5, knight c3. And after the simple bishop d7, Erigaisi not only equalized the game, but he simply got a better position after the opening. C takes, knight c3, this happened. Knight e4, attacking the queen, take it, bishop c6, and black already is slightly better, as this is the position that usually white gets from the black's perspective. However, white was still pretty solid and not really in any danger. So after the bishop trade, knight c6, rook c8, b6, you could definitely feel that black has some space advantage and a beautiful outpost on d4. But then again, white is thinking about organizing a counterplay at the queenside with b4. So that's why here queen d7 was played, bishop e3, h5, trying to cause some discomfort for white at the king side. Knight e4, queen b7, king retreated, and we reached this critical position where probably Arjun slightly rushed with move h4, something he should have done, absolutely, but not right now, because after h4, knight f3, he invited white to take on d4 the exchange to complicate the matters. Of course, Daniel Bogdan-Diak declined, he took with the pawn on g3, and now white just solidified his position by playing b4, queen b4, king g2, and black is in no shape to use this open h-file to deliver any checkmate ideas. The heavy pieces disappeared very quickly, and although black was able to organize a pass pawn at the queen side, he simply was lacking pieces to push it any further. Knight e2, knight b3 was played very quickly, and again, we saw yet another fortress, this time from the white's perspective. After f3, as you can see, the black king can never crash through, because if it goes to a4, white simply puts the king on c2, and nothing's to be done. Draw was agreed after king f6. For Le Quang Liem, the overall ranking leader, this was a very important game because had he won this game, and of course he was also very happy to see that Navarra played a quick draw with black and Kammer had not won his game, he would already had secured the victory of the tournament. And things started to look really well for the Vietnamese Grandmaster because his opponent, the French champion Jules Massard, for the first time in his life played the Queen's Indian defense, which is a very good and solid opening, but the Frenchman was clearly lacking experience in this line. After the opening, this is quite a popular and fashionable line. Rook e8, Queen c2, knight e7, knight e5, the pawn on d5 is under attack. It needs to be protected by bishop b7. Rook d1, you see white is threatening bishop g5, bishop f6, solidify the center with f4 e3, maybe think about future ideas like g4, g5. This prompted black to play h6. Bishop c1, reroute the bishop on b2. Here, knight c4, common trick of the line. Bishop b4, knight e3, c6, a3, bishop f8, and knight f5. This was probably the position where the Frenchman started to go wrong because there's nothing bad about his position. But clearly, again, the experience of playing this line started to tell because he had to play some weighty moves like a5, maybe rook c8, try to gather information in which direction white wants to take this game. Instead, he played a rather strange maneuver, rook e6 and queen e8. And then after bishop h3, suddenly black started to see ghosts because the rook on e6 in some lines is attacked by the bishop. So black played c5, allowing white to play knight b5. Now that's a fork. A rook c6 has to be played, bishop f4. And here, the Frenchman started to make mistakes, which is something that he was quite unhappy about in the post-game interview. First, he suggested that queen d8 is a mistake, which is based on miscalculation, because he suggested maybe knight e4 was the better attempt, offering to sacrifice the exchange. Here, the Frenchman gave some ideas like rook c8, like g6, like c takes on d4, the pawn on a3 summers under attack, and he felt that he has a very interesting compensation. Engines agree. It's definitely a choice. So instead of this, the Frenchman played queen d8, allowing white to play knight e6, c takes on d4, attacks the queen, queen d3. And here, Jules confessed he had missed the following idea because he wanted to play rook takes on d6, a spectacular idea. Now, the key point is, after bishop takes on d6, he has knight c5. As you can see, the queen is under attack. The bishop attacks the bishop. Bishop c5, b takes on c5. He was very happy about this position. Exchange for a pawn, two bishops, a strong pawn center. This should be a very good compensation and fun to play position for the Frenchman. If white would take on d6 with a knight, here Mussar had anticipated to play knight c5 with the same idea. And now the point is that after knight takes on b7, there's intermezzo move. And he had calculated knight e8, knight e1, knight retreats for white, knight goes back to c2, and he has a satisfactory game. At least he thought so. And only here, about here, he realized when he was calculating that white can actually play the stunning move e takes on d3. And the black queen on d8 is trapped. So white is simply winning material. This queen has nowhere to go. Maybe something like queen b8, give up the queen, but in the end, let's say takes, the knight on b7, let's say, is trapped. b4, rook b7, rook c1, black is down in exchange, and probably simply lost. And that's the reason why he had to change his strategy. He realized this idea doesn't work. So he had to take on d6 and play knight c5. But now the key difference here is that after knight b7, black no longer can take on d3 because of the knight e8, and the black rook on c6 is hanging. So after knight b7, queen d4, the Frenchman was up for a long suffering in this position. But he managed to hold well. He was putting up quite a fierce resistance, and he chose the right strategy, which is to give up the pawn on d5. So he managed to activate his pieces. And here it was quite difficult for the Vietnamese Grandmaster to find the right way to crash through. He spent some time trying to improve his position, offered a queen trade, which was rejected by the Frenchman. This probably was one of the best positions that white had, having clearly a better position and an extra pawn. But still the question is how to crash through. About here, the Vietnamese Grandmaster started to lose control of the game. Not really sure what he should have played because black still has some counterplay at the king side. He played a4, queen a3, and this could be an accuracy, rook c3, because after queen b4, white could not play rook c4 because of queen e1 check, and also rook e4 or rook e5 could be a move at some point. Most likely rook e4 attacking opponent a4. So here, rook c2 was played, rook e4 attacks opponent a4, and suddenly black is back in business. Queen b5, take it, rook b4, b6, knight e5, and the opponent b6 is falling. So the Vietnamese grandmaster tried another trick. He entered this endgame willingly. He gave up the pawn, but he was relying on his piece activity, rook f8, and now the Frenchman found a beautiful defense. He played rook b7, g4, and knight b6, giving up the pawn. After the trade, rook f7, he positioned his rook behind the pawn, pushed it forward, and because of his active rook and passive white rook, white cannot really hope for any progress. To the Vietnamese grandmaster's credit, I have to admit that he did absolutely the best he could have done. He found a very interesting way to rearrange his pieces by putting the king on b3, rook on f2, king on a2, rook on h2, but these pawns are weak, and without the king, they're not moving forward. White got his dream set up by two connected passed pawns at the king side, but without a king, he simply cannot make a progress, and draw was agreed. Finally, the most critical game of the round, Vincent Keimer playing against Amin Bassem. For the German grandmaster, this was the perfect opportunity to try to catch the leader, because before round 6, Keimer was 2 points behind the Vietnamese grandmaster, who was having this great position after the opening against Jules Massard. So he surprised his opponent with knight b to d2, rather rare choice, threatening to play e4. Black can play d5, of course. After d5, white normally plays e3, bishop here, and something like b4, bishop b2, c4, with a very interesting setup. Black play bishop g7, e4, d6, we have some sort of a Pirtz defense. Bishop b5 check, interesting intermezzo check, provoking black to play c6. And here, bishop c4, a move which has never been played at highest level. Bishop d3 by far is the most played move. And bishop c4 basically jumps into d5. And yet, Keimer's opening prep says this is good for white. Castle was played, d5 was played, e takes, c takes, and bishop b3. So we reach some sort of exchange Caro-Kann, although normally white has the bishop on d3 or e2 in these positions. And you could definitely tell that Amin Bassem was having some issues in this position because although he got a good position after the opening, he just did not feel the nuances. Pretty much like the Frenchman Jules Massard was having the same issues against the Vietnamese grandmaster Le Quang Liem. So queen c7 was played, knight f1, rook d8, knight g3, and from here on, things started to go terribly wrong for the Egyptian grandmaster. I mean, he could have played e6, he could have played a6, b5, b4, the typical idea for black. Instead, he chose the dubious idea. He played bishop c8 and e6, something he would have regretted later. So after h3, a smart winning move, because white is thinking in some future moments to play knight f1, knight h2, knight g4, knight a5. Again, not another great move by the Egyptian grandmaster. Knight e5, knight e7, knight e3. And now with the naked eye, you can immediately sense that white is simply better because of better position pieces, and black is suffering because of the light square bishop on c8. Knight b3 was traded. Another inaccuracy by the Egyptian grandmaster. His position was deteriorating by every single move. Bishop f4, queen b6, rook a3. Some immediate threats here. Here, the Egyptian grandmaster decided to change the course of the game. After rook e8, rook a1, he decided to sacrifice the pawn because clearly the game is going the wrong way. D takes on e5, d4 was played, so black was trying to open up the position for his bishops. Rook a5, takes, queen b3. However, white continued to play very active, so he had here an extra pawn and beautifully positioned pieces. The black bishop on c8 is simply out of the game. The d6 square is a very nice outpost for the white knight. So in a simple language, white is strategically winning. However, things were not yet over. h6, knight e6, rook e7, c4. Keimer was trying to trap the queen. After knight f8, queen d2, bishop f5. Here, the German star found knight c5, forcing the queen trade. It happened, and he won the second pawn. And after rook b8, one would have thought that white is simply cruising to a victory here, having two extra pawns and space advantage and simply better position pieces. But here, the young German became not accurate and started to commit mistakes. So rook c1 was still a good move, knight e6, and bishop g3. This is the move we criticized during the live commentary, and also Vincent, after the game, he immediately said that was a bad choice because the bishop on g3 is simply disconnected from the game, and this is something that he could never take back later. The right move was bishop e3, with the idea that after bishop f5, what keeps the idea is to play g4, trap the bishop. Now, Vincent after the game said he was concerned about bishop b3, which looks strange as it should be trapped, but he did not see a clear way how exactly to do it. I mean, there's a number of ways how white can continue. Engine suggests to play c5, c6. Perhaps f4 is also a bit more human to protect the pawn on e5. And if black takes away these two knights on b7, rook b5, takes, bishop d5, b6, and white is probably winning. But then again, if you look at this position more closely, it's not so obvious immediately how white is advancing this b pawn. Perhaps rook a1, rook a7, and b6, b7. Either way, it's difficult to give away two minor pieces for the rook just like that. And that's probably also the reason why Keimer played bishop g3, knight e4. The fork on e2 is threatening here, bishop f5, rook d1, knight e2. And now the German player found an interesting way to simplify the position, which perhaps was not such a good idea, really, because he could have played also knight x on f5, g takes, and then play knight e6. Keep more pieces on the board. Knight e8 was chosen, knight f5, nice trick. So the position simplified to the following position. King h7, knight c8, another inaccuracy by the German. Knight c6 was necessary to bring the knight closer, protect the pawn here on e5, and white would be simply up 2 pawns for no compensation and probably slowly but winning position. And now suddenly things became quite tricky. So after knight g3, rook d3, f3, g5, Keimer could not find the right way to convert this game. So the time trouble was over. He made one inaccuracy after another, and suddenly he could not defend this second extra pawn on e5. So he decided to give it up, activate the king, bishop c7, king d4 cannot be played, and we just let's just move forward to the second critical moment of the game where white has an extra pawn, but black is pretty active for the king side. So clearly black will have to give up the bishop for the pawn here on c7, take as many pawns he can at the king side, and hope that this is going to be enough for him to hold the game. Exactly like this was played out in the game. Bassem won the pawn on g2, rook c6, f6, king e6, g4 was a rush choice by the Egyptian grandmaster, and had he played rook a2, rook a1, and just waited for white to show where exactly lies his winning technique, it would be very difficult for the German player to win the game. For example, rook a2, king e7, and rook a7 check. Just go back, rook a2, rook a1, attack these pawns on h3 at some point, and then when the timing is right, think about the idea to play g5, g4. Instead, Bassem rushed with g4. The idea is very interesting to activate the king, but this was simply too early. After h takes on g4, black has a very strong pass pawn, but the German was very accurate. So there was nothing to be done. Very precise move, king f7, rook h3, king e3, knight f5 here, and there was a couple of wins already for white. Knight h4 was simplest of them. Knight h4, rook g1, this is what we saw during the live commentary. King f3, and very, very nice move, knight e3, king e3, king f6. White wins the game. And also, king f6, of course, is winning the game because white gives up the rook, advances the g-pawn, followed by f4, f5, knight g6, and this pawn is unstoppable, and Keimer would win the game. These are the results of round 6. As you can see, Le Quang Lim against Jules Massard, Daniel Bogdan Diak against Arjun Rigaisi, and Yu Yanyi against David Namara. They split points. And Vincent Keimer was the only one who scored a victory, a very, very important victory over Amin Bassem, because in the overall rankings, it's Vincent Keimer who now is leading the tournament. 1 round to go, 13.5 points ahead of Le Quang Liem by half a point. David Navarra is also within contention with 29 points, and in the final round, we're going to see incredible matchups. Navarra faces with white Le Quang Liem, And Winston Keimer plays with black against Arjun Rigaisi. So this is going to bring some very, very exciting action in the final round, which starts today at 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time. Don't miss it and find out who of these 3 players is going to become the champion of the 2023 edition.